Hey everyone, George here, the Disney Family Man, coming to you with another video. I have a good friend of mine who's a friend of the channel, and he's joining me with another conversation. And boy, we had a doozy one even before the recording even started. I'd like to introduce VashSky back to the channel. Hey, sir, how are you?
Doing very well. Thank you for having me on. This has been fun leading up to this moment. So I'm happy already.
Yeah, so let's get the ball rolling. So I thought today we'd talk about a land that's part of Disney California Adventure, but more so like the history behind a certain aspect of this land, because there's a lot that I don't really know too much of it, but you know some in-depth history on it. And folks, whoever's watching and listening out there, it's Hollywood land, and this is a land that I still feel like it's, again, like with the rest of the park, it's still trying to find its identity because a lot has come and gone with the land itself. I mean, they had, correct me if I'm wrong, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, come and
Mm-hmm.
gone, Up at Vision 3D, come and gone. And they have like that backstage area with Stage 17 and
Yep.
a Pixar attraction that's over at Hollywood Land, but there's Pixar Pier on the other side. So it's like,
Yeah, yeah.
there's like a lot going on that's
Well,
I don't
don't
know.
you can't forget Soap Opera Bistro. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, of
that's a
course, yeah,
fan favorite.
yeah. But,
It's very interesting.
but out of everything of that land, there's one particular part of that land that stood out to me when I first had my visit at Disney California Adventure, and it's like as soon as you enter the land, you look down the street, and it's like right there, and it's the Hyperion Theater.
Hmm.
And I was so excited when I went there for my first trip because it was basically the way that they described it was nothing more than as if you were to go to New York and be on Broadway.
Yep.
And it was like that exact type of show quality and that theater style that you could basically pay for a theme park ticket, and that would be the price that you would pay for a show like that at New York, but you're getting it with your theme park admission.
Oh yes.
And it's like the second you walk into that theater, you don't even feel like you're in a theme park anymore. It actually feels like
Mhm.
you are in New York or in some big production studio. Like everything is just so tranquil to its surroundings. And the Aladdin musical was one of the best shows that I've ever seen, especially even in a theme park. The style and the technology that they used. And I also have seen Frozen. It was really good. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, if I had to pick and choose, it's Aladdin. So I mean, so I'm going to give you the mic, sir, and kind of like go through like the history behind the Hyperion, because you and I had a conversation on it. You kind of grasped my attention because it's like I want to know
Mhm.
more about this.
Yeah, it has had a very interesting history. Um, going back to the start of the California Adventure Project, one of the really main stipulations from an operations standpoint was, can we finally give the Disneyland Resort an enclosed theater space, one where we can control lighting, sound, everything, and have a almost like a multi-use facility for the Disneyland Resort? Because really, at that time, Disneyland didn't really have anything like that. They had smaller um, auditoriums like the Great Moments, Opera House Theater, the Magic Eye Theater. They had the Videopolis, but the Videopolis, as groundbreaking as it was back in the 1980s, it was still outside, so there was, it didn't really lend itself to all types of manner of production, of theater production and so forth. They had, I think, at that time I think they had the let me see, the Festival of Foods area, which
Mhm.
was behind, it's essentially where Star Wars Galaxy's Edge now, uh, where Kylo's ship is. That's where it took place in Disneyland. And so they had these areas, but nothing on the scale and level of what they really wanted, which was a kind of enclosed theater, Broadway production type theater space. And so that was one of the first things stipulated as part of going into California Adventures a project. And so you can go back into concepts for Westcott and stuff. There are theaters included. and essentially where they placed it, right on the kind of the corner of the California Adventure space. And the idea was, well, if we have like an enclosed theater, we could have like concerts and stuff. Like we could have, almost like a House of Blues where we have, big names kind of come down and perform at the Disneyland Resort, and we can charge like separate admission. We could have an exclusive entrance and exit from like the street side in, so not you don't necessarily have to go through the theme park to actually get there. Like there were many kind of like concepts thrown around. I remember seeing like a Hollywood Bowl almost type concept, but then it, kind of could be enclosed, and there was all kinds of stuff. Event that didn't really pan out in the way that they kind of thought. But what's really interesting about the Hyperion Theater is that it's almost entirely constructed from the top down by entertainment and not by Imagineering. This is kind of a first. Usually Imagineering takes the lead on all kinds of projects. Oh, wait. Looks like I had an alarm go off. Hey, Google. Alarm. Sorry about that. Whoops.
You have set an alarm for 9
Thank you.
a.m. that is going off right now.
Oh, this is perfect. This is wonderful. This is exactly what I want. I really do apologize. But no. Usually back at that time, Imagineering kind of like, they kind of take the lead on every single project, every single item that you see in a Disney park of, physical permanent item. Imagineering's had in hand at some point. This was kind of one of the first times when really entertainment kind of led the project as it relates to the Hyperion. And as a result, there are some benefits from that. Because it was entertainment driven, it has a state-of-the-art sound system. It has state-of-the-art for that time. And they've updated over the years, especially for the Frozen show. They went back and redid the lighting completely, the show infrastructure, the back of house. I mean, it's for entertainment. And the way I've heard described to me is like, that is like one of the best spaces to put on any show of its kind at any Disney facility anywhere in the world. It's that kind of A grade. So, it's kind of cool that you talked it up in the intro, because that's what they were going for. That was really the intent, the notion behind a space like that, was to kind of make it this kind of like amazing production space. But the reason why entertainment had the lead on this project was a very interesting thing. Back at that time, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when this project was being developed, the California Adventure project was being developed, there was an idea. Paul Pressler, it's kind of interesting. We hear Bob Chapek talk about legacy, and he talks about, like there were things that we did before because we've always done them that way that dictated what we were doing now. And the pandemic has offered a chance to reevaluate those things. And like, okay, like toss conventional wisdom out the window, toss, this kind of culture that we built up, or kind of audience expectation. Let's do something different. Let's do something that's modern, that takes advantage of some of the technologies that are around, but also fulfills the needs that we have currently. A lot of that conversation was happening back in the late 90s with Paul Pressler. And his idea was, well, we have an Imagineering team that goes over budget in a lot of their projects. That they're very ambitious. They're they have an amazing amount of creativity, but that gets us into trouble sometimes. I mean, they had trouble with the operational ins and outs of somewhere like Indiana Jones Adventure, right? Indiana Jones Adventure would break down a lot. You had problems with rocket rods that weren't completely their fault, but that gave them operational headaches. This was coming out of Disneyland Paris and that kind of whole debacle where they spent so much money on a lot of that resort, on those 5 hotels and so forth, and just overbuilt the place. And it took a long time just to even come into the black on Disneyland Paris, and they still have problems financially out there. with that resort. So a lot of it was like, okay, is there? Because one of the things about Imagineering is it's the dedicated arm of the company that builds exclusively for the theme parks as they exist in the Disney parks. That comes with its own disadvantages, though. Like, for example, like Paul Presser was saying, cost and time and so forth. If you could contract those kind of things out and get a bid, and you don't have to support an Imagineering necessarily to do that. You don't. You could be competitive with pricing. You could be competitive with time schedules and those kind of things if you didn't go exclusively through Imagineering. And sometimes Imagineering can get into trouble a little bit when it comes to like building code and stuff. It's kind of surprising how many times they'll kind of screw that up, even though they're a design outfit. And honestly, Imagineering now is not really the WED that we have in our minds from the 1950s and 60s. Like, we always kind of have it in our mind, like, hey, it's Claude Coates, and he's in there, and he's doing the set dressing or the painting for the backgrounds for Snow White's Scary Adventures or something, or he's actually on the site and doing physical stuff in Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, we had that idea of what Imagineering is, and that doesn't really exist anymore. They're almost like a contracting firm that they'll come up with like what projects will look like, what functions they'll have at by the end, and then contract all of those or subcontract all of those roles out to actually get those things constructed. And at that point, they're more like foremen in a way right now. And that process, that kind of change really occurred at this kind of moment because it was all about containing costs. It was all about like, can we streamline this operation down? A lot of those conversations are going on right now, interestingly enough, but that's kind of another thing. And so at that time, Paul Presser was like, okay, well, they were taking out money from Disney California Adventure. I know, it was supposed to get like, I understand it was supposed to get like 3 times the amount of budget that California Adventure eventually got at that time. Barry Braverman was part of that and so forth. But it was like, what if we didn't have Imagineering design every single part of this new project, this Disney California Adventure project? What if we got entertainment to do some of it? And Imagineering pushed back quite heavily, quite loudly. It was always tense during this time, especially when you consider like the Submarine Voyage and attempts to shut that down by management and so forth. And do you remember, like, I don't know if you know, but they had like the Atlantis banner that was outside the Submarine Voyage for a little time.
Oh,
that
yeah.
And that wasn't approved by management. Yeah. And so they were trying to like drum up support for their projects any way they could. And it was a very tense situation.
Right. And
this kind of like put them over the edge. Like Marty Sklar just went crazy. Tony Baxter had his own kind of thing. It just was unfathomable that you were going to have a Disney park, especially across from Disneyland, that wasn't going to be exclusively designed by Imagineering. That was just a foreign concept. Like, can't even imagine it. And even now, it's like that's a kind of a crazy thought or notion. But it was really, Paul Presser. It was like, for him, it was the budget's already going to be constrained. How about we do things to get the most out of it, right? I think that's where he was coming from. But the reality was, And
that's what was so surprising for me because of the budget cuts for DCA and how the Hyperion really didn't get affected by that. Mm-hmm. And still to this day, it's one of the remaining structures from the original concept that's still there, that hasn't been changed other than the show changing, But as far as like the actual structure and the theater itself, it stayed as how it was opening day.
Yeah, and the reason for that was the utility of it. It could be as a flex multi-use space that the Disneyland Resort really needed. So I think that's why a lot of that budget did remain with it, and that concept really wasn't changed that much. It did suffer cuts. I mean, the exterior of the building, love it or hate it, is a box with one themed side.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of a interior wise, it's very minimalistic, right? It doesn't have the embellishments of, say, like a Muppets Theater, for example, right? Which is fine. And they've done really well in trying to hide a lot of that, but it's still kind of minimalistic in that way. It doesn't have like a indoor queue like it has, like the waiting area.
Was it planned for that though?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so it was planned for that. Okay.
Yeah, there were plans to fully enclose that area. There were plans to fully enclose that for the 2012 redo, which we'll get into. But there were more ambitious plans to fully enclose some aspects, theme some aspects, and so forth. It just never got off the ground. I think the exterior job that you see on the Hollywoodland side was an imaginary thing, but everything else was pretty much entertainment, especially when you get inside, particularly when you get inside. But for Paul Presser, that's kind of what he wanted to do, and that's kind of how entertainment became involved in that way. It was kind of an outgrowth of that idea. And, is there anything entertainment can do? Well, they can do the theater. Okay, let's have them do the theater. And it shows. I mean, it's a fantastic production space. It comes with the kind of entertainment in mind, first and foremost, instead of just a kind of an afterthought. And that has facilitated some great productions. It's kind of interesting because it started out kind of shaky. It had there was an initial show, and I do apologize. I probably should have done research for this before this segment, but I can't quite remember it. Listen, guys, it was forgettable. Okay, extremely forgettable, kind of cringeworthy. It was of that kind of like the California Adventure kind of conceit where it was like, oh, this is going to be a new park, modern, it's going to be hip, it's going to be cool, it's not going to have like that kind of like that Disney magic, it's going to be like awesome, and that didn't really work, and it was kind of an outgrowth of that that kind of motif, that concept. But then it had the Power of Blast, and that was pretty cool. That was a pretty fun show. The Blast was kind of a traveling act that made its way into California Adventure for a period of time, and that was a lot of fun. And then eventually we got Aladdin, and to your point, I mean, it was one of the best shows ever thought of or dreamt of by entertainment.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, because I've seen snippets of like before YouTube became big, but like when they were kind of like having their promotional commercials and everything to kind of get people to come to this park, because I mean it was just like all over the place. But the one shining part for me was them showing parts of Aladdin, and it was like, wow, I would really love to see this. And which is so surprising because with me being on the East Coast and going to Walt Disney World, I would have expected to see some type of theater at Hollywood Studios in that same aspect. But for California Adventure, it's like that's exactly what I've wanted to see at the studios, but we still not have gotten a theater like that. And I really hope that in time that theater stays at DCA, regardless of what becomes of Hollywoodland itself. Because that was my big main worry, is like when they were considering on changing Hollywoodland into the Avengers campus before they decided on a Bugs Land, I thought, what is to become of the theater? And what would it become as far as entertainment wise? Because everything else with surrounding it would be Marvel.
Yeah. Well, the idea was just to stick with Frozen. That was kind of going into Avengers Campus. It kind of that kind of mentality of like everything's full bore. Everybody rocking on all cylinders, and the Hyperion was kind of left out of that. Frozen was not that old at that point, so it was like, well, let's keep Frozen in there. Let's keep it operating. Let's keep a kind of a show that people enjoy in there, and that will take a lot of the heat off of Avengers Campus, which one could argue could have been integrated into Avengers Campus before, but I don't think they wanted to go quite that route, especially with a show as young as Frozen was at that time. Unfortunately, Frozen, man, it was a victim of this whole kind of thing. Really, it was a very expensive production, extremely expensive. Those costumes were, I mean, they were a lot.
You could tell just by. I sat in like the first and second row when I saw Frozen. I thought, wow, these costumes look like it came from a genuine, like right off of Broadway type of thing. This wasn't like theme park meet and greet costume.
No. These were expensive. These were money. And the thing about those costumes is that they have to be taken off and on quickly for performers to do their do their routines in between segments. So they have a lot of things to facilitate that transition. It's extremely expensive production. Used a lot of like groundbreaking technology that Aladdin can only dream of. Had a lot of moving platforms, and I know that was kind of one of the issues that kind of caught it up early. Was they would have these performances that would everything's fine, everything's working, start it, and then like one Wi-Fi controlled prop or set piece would not make its mark, and then it would just kind of stop the production cold in its tracks because it's it can't navigate these pieces into place.
Actual prop.
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of funny. We were there for some of the first performances to see that, and that was a very interesting problem to kind of overcome. They had problems, the show length was kind of an issue. They wanted, I think, 5 shows for a day. They can only get up to like 3 or 4, really. I mean, 4 really kind of pressing it too. They really averaged 3. And so it was a very expensive show to perform. It had suffered cuts even before it was eventually closed after, post shutdown. They had made cuts to the funeral segment that was completely removed. The introduction where you had like the icebreakers, those were removed. So, it kind of had its issues, its foibles. And so when the decision came to cancel it, I wasn't that surprised. It was like, yeah, I get it. Very expensive production, couldn't get the number of shows out that they needed, and the cuts they already made kind of neutered the show in a way.
So they cut the show completely because of the budgeting, not necessarily because there's the possibility of it becoming Marvel?
Yeah, it was purely budgetary. Okay. Purely budgetary, purely, they knew, the company knew it was going to get hurt by the pandemic. They knew that entertainment was likely not going to come back for the foreseeable future, especially in California. So it just kind of made sense from all those standpoints, which was really difficult. I mean, the cast, they really put their hearts and souls into it, but it just didn't make sense. Mickey Magical Map was also cut, which was unfortunate, but for completely different reasons. So just kind of what it was. But going back, I mean, we kind of skipped over Aladdin. Aladdin was amazing. Just it really kind of like, it was one of those things that made you like want to get a ticket for DCA.
Yeah,
I mean, a little harsh, but
yeah, at that time it really was, because I mean, you kind of take a look at how DCA started out as the 1.0, so to speak, and then you have all of that, and then you have this beautiful, gorgeous, magnificent theater that is holding this show that is, again, I keep on repeating it, but that's exactly what it is, like that Broadway style length amount of time with these props and these costumes and the special effects. And it's like, you compare that to some of the shows at Hollywood Studios at Disney World, and it's like, there's no comparison.
Yeah. I believe for Aladdin and Frozen, they hired like Broadway guys, Broadway directors, Broadway, kind of showrunners to kind of formulate these shows. I mean, they are Broadway production shows. I mean, that's not an overstatement. That is literally what these are, and they're just incredible productions, incredible exhibitions in theater and performance. I mean, they really, really are quite magical. And with that amazing sound system and some of the technologies that they imbued into this performance space, it really is magical. Seeing Aladdin and Jasmine up on that carpet flying over guests, that was a kind of a really special moment. And it's just, it's a testament to entertainment, a testament to that kind of like mentality. Hey, how can we elevate this experience? Well, we can do this. And that is really one of the things that a dedicated performance space, especially one that's enclosed, really provides them. So the way to leverage that was pretty cool. I know they're kind of like, you kind of get a little bit of aspects of those in various places in Hollywood studios, particularly with their Little Mermaid show and maybe their Beauty and the Beast show, maybe their Indiana Jones show. But it's Hyperion's really the complete package, and it's breathtaking.
And I love how when it came time for as far as the script for the genie, like they gave him a pretty much overall type of part, like where they wanted the genie to go, but they hired a lot of these, California stand-up comedians that knew how to ad-lib and knew how to throw things in and use the environment as their script, so to speak. Because I remember I've seen a show for Aladdin, and it was like right at the time when Aladdin broke his promise to Genie, and like right at that moment there was a child crying in the audience, and the Genie just turns and says, "See what you did, Al? You just made that child cry." And it was like the audience just went nuts for like 2 minutes, and then they had to get like right back into the script of the line. So I mean, again, just like with Broadway, you can get that at times, like where it's like they involve their surroundings of what's going on and incorporate that in the show.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was, the Genie. It was one of the few roles where they were allowing kind of this cast member to kind of ad lib and kind of add to the show in his own way. And it started out kind of modest, but then those ad libs kept growing and growing, and different performers.
They threw some things in because when I was there, he was hitting some swings at the Kardashians and Jersey Shore, and it was like, wow, it's like.
Yeah, all of the big hot topics of the day were kind of imbued in that, and it's consistent with his character in the movie. So, I mean, we can do some fourth wall-ish breaking stuff and still be true to this character, but it was just really this kind of great outlet to kind of give this cast member, these various cast members who play the Genie, this ability to kind of make this show fresh on a daily, weekly performance basis, and there were, I mean, you had some Aladdin fans who would show up every single show. I mean, they would go consistently to see what was the Genie going to do today? What was the Genie going to do this time? I mean, I remember going to the parks at that time and going to California Adventure to just see Aladdin, man, once every day that we were there. I mean, it was a big deal. And man, just fantastic. It was really, really great. Really a lot of fun.
I was one of those people. Like anytime that I made a trip out there, if I was going to DCA multiple days, I purposely saw the show again because it's like, what is going to come out of his mouth that's going to be, shocking or like not expected, or if something happens within the audience or what have you that he could throw in there in the script as well. So I mean, I love when things are the same, but yet can change up from day to day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, all the beats were hit every single time, but the Genie's, ability to kind of imbue fresh material, fresh content, fresh kind of topics of the day, topics of in the news and the headlines and stuff like that. That was really a lot of fun. And like I said, I mean, it's just, he started out a little small, and then new cast members brought things to the role and just kind of lengthened those things out. And just, I mean, he was a highlight. He was a treat. You can sing those songs and hear those lines over and over again, but the Genie kept it fresh, and it was a lot of fun. Well, just really great. Brings back A lot of great memories.
It does, and that's where the Hyperion Theater as a whole resonates with me because, as I said, I've seen Frozen. I've seen it a couple times, but it's just something with me as far as like when I think of the Hyperion, I think of Aladdin. Like that's what comes to my mind, and I really do hope that I assume that they're still going to keep the theater, even though nothing's planned to be put in it. But I'm for sure they'll have something for it, as things start to reopen back up.
They're going to keep the theater. One of the aspects I forgot to mention was the way it was constructed, the way, the genie it was kind of this lightning in a bottle where his performances really benefited from the fact that the theater was constructed for kind of a more intimate space than you might expect out of other Disney performance spaces and so forth. And so that intimacy really created a great, almost stand-up comedian type vibe. It was really, really fun. But yeah, I mean, the Hyperion is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Actually, there have been concepts that have been thrown around to actually re-theme the theater and better incorporate it into Hollywoodland proper. There's a piece of concept art, which I will share. Here, yep, there you go. And this was one that they had released for the relaunch of DCA between 2008 and 2012. And this was included in the Blue Sky Cellar. And the little tagline on the Blue Sky Cellar exhibition of this concept art was, hey, we're going to be redoing the Hyperion Theater to better incorporate into the land. That never happened, unfortunately. It is kind of a boxy structure. It's kind of like it's interesting. It's like if Tower of Terror was there, it would make a little bit more sense aesthetically. It would draw you in a lot better than the Hyperion currently does. And unfortunately, that's the place that they decided to build it, and it doesn't really, I don't think, capture a lot of the essence that we would, kind of what am I trying to say? That we would kind of mentally associate with a Disney park on Disney quality and so forth. It doesn't quite fit that, which is unfortunate. But hopefully it does get some kind of redo to better incorporate itself into the land, whatever that happens to be. Now, previously it was going to remain as kind of a nod to old Hollywood, but there have been discussions. There have been, it's like, well, Avengers Campus is right there. Why don't we make all of it an Avengers themed land? And I think that is, again, these plans change. I know there's kind of a 4 to 5 year kind of hiatus on a lot of projects, so we'll see what happens after all of that. But that is kind of where it's kind of going. And if that's the case, then what is really the future of the Hyperion at that point? Obviously, the Disneyland Resort still needs a performance space. It's not going anywhere, but what does the facade look like if it's incorporated into an Avengers type space? And what kind of show plays inside of an Avengers type space? So I think it's going to be really fascinating what happens here down the line.
Well, and it's almost like even with DCA, where we were having the discussion with Orange Grove when we were saying that, you have Pixar Pier, and then you have on one side, it's the Pixar Palaron, and then on the other side, you have the picture of Mickey Mouse, which is incorporated within World of Color. And I think if that trend continues with this park, I think if down the road that Hollywoodland would eventually become a second expansion for Marvel and the Avengers, I think it would be the outside facade of the theater itself would incorporate around the look of Avengers and Marvel, but it's the possibility that once you enter through the theater that it could be non-Marvel related. So that does make me wonder, like, is that the route that they're going to go if they decide to change it to Marvel? You could,
I think there's a world where the Hyperion exists kind of removed. I mean, it can be the facade and everything can be integrated into the land of whatever theme that they have. But I think there is a possibility that whatever exists in that space doesn't necessarily reflect the surroundings. And I think it's kind of interesting. I think they would be, I think they would be open to the notion of anything taking place in that space and have a potential disconnect there. Because I mean, the possibilities are endless at that point. Whereas if it's landlocked and land limited, there's certain limitations that placed on it. But just kind of brainstorming in the Marvel space, though. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of these little shows that they're doing. Doctor Strange little show, Spider-Man show. I think they're going to have like a more like an Avengers, Black Panther, Black Widow, Captain America type thing on the what is it, the underneath the Quinjet.
The Quinjet
as part of the Avengers campus. Yeah, right. And then they have the Black Panther guards. They have a name, and I can't think of it right now. But they have these little shows, these little things that kind of incorporate you as a guest into the land and kind of make the land kind of a more breathing thing than maybe Galaxy's Edge, but that's a whole other story. You could kind of see that kind of idea brought to the Hyperion and what possibilities that would bring. What if we went from a kind of a musical Broadway production to a kind of indoor stunt show? What if, what if what if Spider-Man, instead of going over people's heads on top of his show building, what if he was able to web around the theater? What if you had Doctor Strange bring in portals for other type of adventures that would make their appearances in the space? And instead of just having like a musical kind of setup, maybe you could have a setup that has an Avengers storyline play out right in front of you. I think those are the ideas that are very, very interesting, and I could definitely see incorporated into the future of Hollywoodland going forward.
I'm still very curious, though, of how, like, looking at this concept art, the transition, because you also have to think, too, that Hollywoodland by the Hyperion moves into where Avengers Campus is, where Mission Breakout is, but it's also adjacent from the front end of where we were looking down the street to Buena Vista Street. So Hollywoodland kind of has that connection with Buena Vista Street because that's the time when Walt Disney came out. He had the premiere of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. So it's basically one land connecting into the other, where now if they were to change it to Avengers, it would be Buena Vista Street and then walk down the street and there you have Marvel. So I would think that even though if they were to incorporate Marvel, the transition look of the land itself would still kind of have that Hollywood vibe, so to speak.
I think so. There are ways you can go about this, just to speculate a little bit. You could have a kind of old school Hollywood inhabited by the kind of classic Marvel characters that would be consistent with kind of a 1940s, 1950s kind of timepiece. But instead of the urban environment of, like, say, a New York, you could have it be downtown Los Angeles or California. You could do stuff like that to make that transition maybe a little bit better. That would create potential problems with how it integrates with the rest of Avengers Campus, but I think you can solve those issues quite easily. So there are ways you can go. Obviously, you might have some transitional problems with Buena Vista Street, especially with how those interconnect and how integrated they are. Avengers Campus right now, you have to kind of go around the Carthay Circle Theater to get into Avengers Campus. So there's that kind of disconnect there. There's kind of that mark of demarcation that wouldn't necessarily exist in Hollywoodland, and they would have to overcome that. I think they can, but I think that's kind of where they're going.
I think so too, because if you actually look at the current map of where Avengers Campus, sits, it's not a real big section of the land because it only took up a Bug's Land, and a Bug's Land wasn't that big. So, and then aside from in the back where you have Mission Breakout, you basically only have that piece of land that's still left over in between Mission Breakout and Cars Land. and then you have Hollywoodland. That
Mhm.
was essentially what I thought was going to be Marvel from the get. I thought A Bug's Land would have been, let go. But and then when they said, "Oh, we're taking out A Bug's Land for Avengers Campus," it's like, wow, you had a bigger section at Hollywoodland. So which way are they going? But I mean, that section of the park still has potential to have something, because as I mentioned before in the beginning, was you have even this Pixar attraction that's all the way over in Hollywoodland that for me I really don't even think fits there, and you have Pixar Pier, so it's like it's kind of scattered at the moment.
Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting story too. In that Monsters Inc. Show building there, previously it was the Superstar Limo attraction, and
That's best ride in the park.
yeah, exactly. It was a sleeper hit. I mean, really, as the only dark ride experience in California Adventure 2001, it really lived up to its name. No, it was absolutely horrible and terrible, but. It's interesting because we talked about how entertainment kind of took the reins for the Hyperion specifically. One of the outgrowths of the idea of maybe Imagineering not taking the lead role in every single project in the parks going forward was kind of Superstar Limo. And there's kind of this urban legend. I've been trying to see if this is actually for real. I've not gotten great clarity on this, so I'll just kind of tell it and maybe take this with a grain of salt. But for Superstar Limo itself, Barry Braverman looking to, he was the guy. Hey, we need to fill the space of Communicore, right? Back in Epcot, it kind of was passe. The technologies had kind of come around, and so it needed a refresh. And it was like this huge space, and it's like, what are we going to do? Barry Braverman has the idea, hey, look, how about we do a type of concept like there's a electronics consumers conference in Vegas. Which one is that again? It was it's a famous one. Look.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm trying to remember all this on the fly. Give me a break here. Okay. Michael Eisner kind of saw it and went, "Oh, this is amazing. We should bring this to Epcot." Barry Braverman had the idea. Well, wait a minute. What if we had pavilions that were sponsored by the companies showing off their technologies as kind of an exhibition kind of thing? And if they sponsor it, well, that pays for the whole project, and we can do whatever we want. And that was kind of that's kind of led to the inception of Innoventions. Brought that concept over to Disneyland. And so he was like, hey, we need DC to work. We're going to have a very limited budget. Barry Braverman's the guy. And so Barry Braverman being the guy was like, well, wait a minute. We have a dark ride concept for, Superstar Limo, which in itself has an amazing history. It was essentially going to be kind of like a modern Mr. Toad's attraction. And it was going to be it was almost kind of like a roller coaster, but not rock and roller coaster, very much smaller scale, but be kind of zippy and fast. And the idea was, hey, you're a star and you're running away from the paparazzi to get to the show. Okay, good concept, limo, go. Well, Princess Diana happens. And when Princess Diana happens, which I shouldn't be laughing, a tragedy, but ironically funny in this concept, in this way, where it's like you have this whole idea of
you have a
away from
real
the
life
paparazzi
situation that's now going to interfere with an attraction, because it's like the timing was like, okay, well, we can't do this now.
Exactly, yeah. And it's like you can't even touch this, like you said, and it's one of those things. It's like, man, what happens with this? And so it was like, okay, we'll slow it down completely, like to a crawl. And instead of the paparazzi, chasing you down, they'll make appearances throughout the show, but it won't heavily lean into that. Obviously, you still need them for the on-ride photo at the end, so you still need some of their inclusion, but not throughout the attraction. Hey, well, come on. It's 2001 Disney. You got to have the on-ride photo. You got to have the gift shop. So, that's kind of the route they went down. But the budget just kept getting cut and cut and cut and cut. And it was just like, man, how are we going to build this thing? And Barry Braverman was like, hey, look, we got like 8 show scenes or whatever. Okay, well, how about this? He went up to these contractors who did, interior paint work, theme set dressing, and so forth, and just went to them and said, hey, look, we're looking to partner with an outfit for Disney projects going forward. We need a test of your work, though. We need a demo of your work. Could you produce a demonstration of your work in this facility we have at the Disneyland Resort? And it's like, okay. And so it's kind of one of those, like, you get enough tiles, free tiles for your like roof or something, and you have enough tiles and you can do the roof kind of thing. It was a little bit of that. He just kept going to outfits and gave them the song and dance and said, hey, we need a demonstration of your work. Come on down to Disneyland and show us what you got. And they got the whole ride out of that. This kind of crazy thing of like, hey, well, just we really need to see
and it really shows in the final product. It really shows.
It does, and that's why some things artistically look a little bit different from room to room. That would be why. I've been trying to get confirmation on the story. From what I understand, it is true, but some things are urban legend. But the knowing Barry Braverman, knowing how that whole process went, I wouldn't be surprised. And so, yeah, and it's just like this thing opens. It's horrible. It's terrible. It's panned by everybody who visits California Adventure. They shut it down. I mean, and this is if you're familiar with California Adventure, especially 2001 California Adventure, that's a park that's starved for attractions, even now. And so to shut down a attraction, not because of mechanical issues or anything else, but because literally it's so bad, that tells you a lot about 2001 DCA.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, I've seen DCA at 1.0. I mean, like a lot of the architecture and the art was very, very tacky, very postcard type of feel. But I mean, like I've never personally been on the Superstar limo, but I watched a YouTube video of it, and I thought, I just want to see what it's all about, because they said, with this urban legend type of a ride, it's really, really bad. And I like went through the whole thing, and I just was laughing the whole entire time of watching it, because I thought, this is so bad. Like I couldn't even see this in a regular carnival, let alone a Disney theme park. It's like, I mean, I would take Mike and Sully to the rescue any day over that.
Yeah. I can tell you, folks, from firsthand, I got to see it. I got to see Superstar Limo for that short period of time it was actually available at the park, and I can tell you firsthand, it is as bad as people said it was. I mean, this thing was terrible. It's just like,
and the celebrity caricatures.
Oh my god,
they were bad. Drew Carey, Joan Rivers, Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, it was like,
it's all these like C-listers that ABC was working with at the time, So you had like Whoopi Goldberg, you had Jackie Chan, you had Drew Carey. You had all these guys that were like, oh my god, like, this is not good. This is bad. This is really bad. I remember very young. It's
basically the people that paparazzi wouldn't want to take a picture of. Those are the people that they put in the ride.
Exactly. There's like this special where Drew Carey and the cast of the Drew Carey show actually go through it. I think Rosie O'Donnell's there too, and you could just see them, and they're trying to like make that work, and it's just not working, guys. It's just like you can kind of see it on their face, like, what is this? Like, what are we doing right now? And it's so sad because Drew Carey is actually a huge fan of the parks, and to get that as your attraction, Not great. That sounds dangerous too, but another story. Anyway,
their careers peaked at that point. So it's like they've made it into a Disney theme park, but not exactly how they wanted it.
Not really immortalized in the rich tapestry, the legacy of Disney theme parks, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and I remember young VashSky going through there with the family, and it was like what is this? Like what? Like what?
Pay attention, it's joke time.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I guess. Oh boy. So I go through that, and they close it. And for the relaunch of, it was the 50th anniversary of the Disneyland. There was an idea like, okay, well, we're gonna have record-breaking attendance for this thing. We need all facilities, all attractions to be up and running. And we met at that time. The president of Disneyland Resort says, "Take me through that Superstar limo ride. Let's see if we can get anything out of that." And apparently, they still had it. They still had the sets. It was all there. He goes through it one time and says, "No way, no, we cannot have this thing open." So, unfortunately, that's what happened. That's what happened there. So when Monsters Inc., My Consultant to the Rescue, took over that space, trust me, it was it was far better than what Proceeding did for sure. I mean, it was certainly an upgrade. But the unfortunate part of it is, it's still the same layout, still the same track, and so you still have those design constraints when doing an attraction like that, and you can kind of see a lot of those celebrities that we talked about before. They're still in the attraction. They've just been covered up by those kind of suits, the kind of sanitization or the clean suits that some of those monsters wear. They're still there though. You can see some of the poses that they make, and it's still the same. Like Jackie Chan and stuff like that. They're still there. It's quite funny in that way.
That's funny. We need like a side by side, like before and after, like saying, "Oh, this one's Jackie Chan. This one's Joan Rivers. This one's."
I think if you go to yesterland.com, you can see those. So they have a lot of them there. Like Drew Carey, for example, he had like the star maps or whatever, like showing you the high points of Southern California, LA, Hollywood, and that kind of thing. And he had like the little maps that like that popped out, That animatronic is still there. It's just, hey, have you seen this missing child kind of thing?
Yeah.
And it's really, really funny. But yeah, I mean, it just doesn't quite work. It doesn't quite integrate itself into the land at all, really. Monstropolis kind of, fits some of the aesthetic of Hollywood Land, but not really, And yeah, Pixar, a Pixar themed land is on the other side of the park, and this is just sitting here kind of on its own kind of thing. It just doesn't quite work. And
Yeah.
so I think that's one of the other aspects that would be taken care of with a Hollywood Land redo.
Yeah, I think in time it's definitely the land that hasn't gotten too much change throughout the years, and I think with the rest of the park kind of changing and upgrading and expanding, even like with Pixar Pier and now with Avengers Campus, and now you have this land that's kind of locked in between Avengers Campus and Buena Vista Street, and like all around that area got essentially changed because even Buena Vista Street used to be Sunshine Plaza. So it's like everything got changed except for Hollywood Land, and it's basically, I'd say, like the last leg of the stool as far as like with DCA that would pretty much need a revamp. It's just the question now, what is it going to be?
Yeah, I mean, there were notions of like redoing DCA as I think as part of the $1.3 billion that they spent on the full redo of DCA from 2008 to 2012. There were concepts that Hollywood Land would be included, but it really, once you start divvying up budgets, once they kind of got into a lot of the construction, Cars Land just kept eating up all that cash, and so that kind of took away from other areas. So it really didn't take place the way they kind of envisioned before. There were concepts even for Paradise Pier at that time, attractions and so forth that were going to go in there, and that didn't really occur either. So Hollywood Land didn't just get the shaft, but but some of the other places did as well. So it's unfortunate, it just kind of happens.
At the time, I'm glad it did, because
Yeah.
if there's one land that I could spend my whole entire day in at DCA is Cars Land.
Mhm.
Like, I can literally go from morning to night into that land and just stay there.
Oh yeah, the lighting package that it has at night. When the when sunset happens and stuff, and all the neon comes on, and it's an incredible land, incredible. I've heard it characterized this way before. It's the start of the trilogy of lands, right?
Mm-hmm.
That Cars Land was kind of the first one, Pandora, and then Galaxy's Edge. It's kind of that kind of trilogy of great themed amusement lands that kind of put you right in the story, and that really started with Cars Land and DCA, and it kind of holds up to that.
Well, you gotta think too that the number one, it outbeats Pandora, outbeats Galaxy's Edge, outbeats Cars Land. Yet you can't leave go of Toy Story Land. I mean, come on, that's like the quintessential themed land.
That's quite the take there. I'm gonna leave you right there where that's at right there.
Yeah.
I don't think I can join you that quick. I don't think I can cross that bridge, so to speak.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Pixar Pier might be the start of the budget lands, and Toy Story Land might be in there as well, unfortunately. I will say Toy Story Land in Hollywood Studios is a lot better than some of the other Toy Story lands that we've saw from all over various parts of the world, like Hong Kong and Paris specifically. So you got that going for it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But comparing it with Cars Land and Pandora, that's like,
Yeah, can't quite go that far. Right?
Yeah.
And they hype it up too, like it's on that level, and it ain't, folks.
Yeah.
It ain't.
No.
But getting back to California Adventure, though, I will agree with you. It is probably the last stool, that last land that, man, if you were to really redo that in a way that kind of brought the quality level up of that land to where the other lands are, really, not just in Disney California Adventure, but really at the Disneyland Resort. It would complete that whole park, essentially. And it just, there have been so many concepts knocked around for so long. It's almost like a meme at this point,
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, it really is. It's just one of those things where it's going to change. Just now it's some of the decisions that Disney has made throughout the years. It's kind of like, okay, is this really going to work? And then it's like a lightning in a bottle. It's like it could go either way. It's like Russian roulette, and it's like it could either be for the good or for the bad. But we just have to trust their judgment, and whatever they decide in the end, we'll have to wait and see.
I guess so. It's it really is unfortunate, especially now. It's with what's going on in the world right now. It's just really kind of slowed a lot of those things up, and it's. Man, there were some really great things coming down the line. There was really great things that were in development, and those things had to change, outright canceled, or so forth. And it really is unfortunate. There was another concept. Just to quickly hit this, are you familiar with the Eastern Gateway project?
Yes.
Yeah,
I followed that from beginning to the unfortunate end.
Oh gosh, that was such a debacle there at the end. It really was. But that was the whole kind of, for those unfamiliar, that was the parking structure concept that was going to be built on the eastern side of Disneyland, beyond Tomorrowland and so forth. And that would have, part of that development project would have opened up more areas for Hollywoodland to kind of grow into. That previously were inaccessible. They had the bus station drop off there, just beyond those borders, and that would have taken up all that space and transferred that bus drop-off zone to the other side of Harbor. And I think, if I'm tracking the timeline correctly, I think that's where the Avengers initially wanted to go with Avengers Campus. And if that area of land was available, that's they probably would have bumped out the borders of Avengers Campus to take up those areas and so forth. And when that kind of, unfortunately was kind of canned by the city and some of those things that were going on at that time, kind of had to reassess and reevaluate. And I think that's where we end up with Bugs Land, which, I mean, better or worse, I think those areas will be, incorporated in the future. It's just they couldn't do it at that time in the way they had originally envisioned. So it was like, okay, well, eventually the Eastern Gateway project is going to happen. It has to happen. So we'll just leave it, for another time, and we'll just settle for Bugs Land. So that's kind of what happened there. And I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens going forward.
And I think also too, like what's going on with the world today and everything, it's just kept on being put on the shelf and put on the back burner. And it's like, I think that's going to be like one of the last projects that gets changed after they completely redo everything, because we're still even going to be waiting for the e-ticket attraction for Avengers Campus. So they're going to focus on that before touching Hollywood Land. And then I also think too, when my prediction is when Hollywood Land probably would get a revamp or what have you, is when the Disneyland Forward kind of project in mind as the years go on, that's when it would probably start to see some change.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it before. I would think that they would saturate all the space that they have now and then move out.
Then do Disneyland Forward. Okay, that's
probably or concurrently. I mean, it's like you say, like they could do it concurrently, but I would kind of think that Hollywood Land would be done first. But I don't know. I mean, we'll see if that's what they want to do.
It may be where they do Disneyland Forward, where they do everything but Hollywood Land, and that's it.
Yeah, true. Just kick it down the can some more. It's somebody else's problem. Just like Tomorrowland, Disneyland. We'll get around to that. What is the terminology now? We'll circle back on that.
Yeah, it could sit there with the Paradise Pier Hotel.
Yeah, exactly. Oh God, that's another. Folks, we can go on forever talking about the history of all these things. I swear. There's some things that Disney Company does sometimes, and it's like, really? We still have the Pixar Pier? Like, you didn't even rename it? Like, just rename it. It's the Pixar Pier Hotel. Okay. Give it a light, modest retheme. Nope, nothing.
Yeah, no. You have Pixar Pier, you have Paradise Gardens, and you have the Paradise Pier Hotel. So it's like...
Yep. Yeah, I think Paradise Pier is one of those. Paradise Pier Hotels is a victim to, well, let's not throw good money after bad, so to speak. If we have bigger grand plans attached to the Pixar Pier Hotel, we'll keep it in the state how it is. Run it till the wheels fall off, and then do something about it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's basically how it goes.
That's how it goes. You'd be surprised how many things get that treatment. You'd be surprised.
I believe it. I mean, I a lot of times, like, of being a huge Disney fan, it's like, I don't want to see it that way, but I mean, it's starting to show it concurrently, and it's like, really? It's like, come on.
Yeah, we started off the show, before we started off the show, we had a conversation about this, coming into this, and there's just some stuff that Disney Company's doing right now. It's just like, come on, guys, come on. I mean, guest experience first. That should be overall. What qualifies as show, good show, bad show? Let's remember our old standing principles. Unfortunately, as we get further away from Walt, we also get further away from those things. So we'll see.
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, and even back to what this whole segment was, that, the Hyperion Theater, for me, that was a quintessential good decision, great decision on Disney's behalf. And then later on in the conversation, we have the Superstar Limo.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's two different stories playing out side by side, completely different reasons, completely different things going on with them that make them the experiences that they are or were.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for joining me today on this very interesting road down a history of the Hyperion Theater and Hollywood Land, and again, that number one attraction that DCA of the Superstar limo. I mean, we can't forget about it. You can't.
Can't forget about it. The greatest dark ride to ever exist. Superstar limo.
Yes. Every time that we get on the subject, you have to bring it up because you can't leave it go.
Exactly right. Exactly. What is it?
We've made mistakes. I have made mistakes.
Mistakes were made.
We own them.
Mistakes were made.
Exactly. Yeah. And if there's any time in today's time, we could pretty much say the world is one big Superstar limo.
Yeah. That is exactly what it is. Exactly what it is. That's it. That's perfect. Perfect analogy.
So on that note, folks, we want to thank you for joining us today. VashSky, again, thank you for joining me, sir. And how can everyone find you?
Best way to find me, best way to interact with me is going to be on Twitter at VashSky. Should be right here. There you go. Just go there. Glad to talk and glad to interact with you. Yeah, go there. For as far as videos go, I'm producing stuff for Orange Grove 55's channel on YouTube. Freshly squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. That's where I'm at. We're going to be doing. This is an exclusive for you, George. You're going to like this. I'm going to be doing an interview with Orange Grove 55 on his recent trips to Disneyland. He went, I believe, last weekend, and I believe he's going on Saturday as well. So that's going to be quite interesting. So we should have an interview, I think Monday, I think is when it's gonna go there. So tune in for that, folks. It's going to be really great.
All right. Sounds good. And a lot to look forward to, folks. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, stay Disney. Bye, everybody.